Welcome.
Hey everyone.
Hello, hello.
Oh, cool. So this records for me anyway. I don't even have to do anything.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I love the auto record.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was an option. Good to know. How do you do that? Is it like through Zoom?
When you're setting up the Zoom,
you can just like one of those.
One of the options. You
cool.
Can, yeah.
Cool. Good to know. Because I host a lot of webinar stuff, so that's good to know.
I know it's definitely the one thing that I'm always like, oh my God, I forgot.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome, folks. We're going to give a couple minutes for everyone to arrive. Welcome.
Hey everyone. If you're in the chat, make sure that you're addressing panelists and attendees so everyone can see, not just us three. if you want everyone to see.
And feel free, if you feel called, to rename yourself under the participants thing. You can add your desired pronouns.
Oh yeah.
Your witch name.
I'm used to mine like showing up automatically. Okay, let's do that here. Whew, this full moon. I don't know if I'm going to sleep tonight.
Yeah, it's been so like, the full moons when the light and the night is just like electric blue.
Yes, yeah. And then on top of it, it's like full moon conjunct Uranus. And so it literally feels like electricity coursing through our bones. It's a lot. Hello. Oh my gosh. We got someone from Greece. Wow. Oh, thank you. Louisville, Kentucky. Seoul. Wow.
Wow, amazing.
Lenape lands, my old resting ground. Maui. Oh, wow. Truly, everyone's all over the place. I love it.
I love hearing this. I love seeing it. Thank you for sharing, everyone.
Yeah.
Washington, D.C. Dallas.
Oh. Yay.
Beth, Julie.
Sweet.
Wow, cool. Well, since everyone is sharing their details here, I might as well kind of get us rolling this evening. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We're so excited about this keynote offering. I just want to say a few words of logistics to set us off on the right note. You are all in a webinar, so that's why you can't see yourselves. A couple things are different about this. We have the chat function, which we welcome you to use. And then we also have a Q&A function. Do we have a Q&A function? No, I can't.
Yeah, I don't see it. That's why I don't.
Great.
Thanks, Mercury.
Thanks, Mercury. So since we don't have a Q&A function for some reason, I'm going to ask you if you have a question that you would like Kirah to answer. I want you to put a capital Q and then write your question if possible. That would be great so we can kind of keep track as the moderators. I myself, Casey Zavala, she, her, am here moderating with Karima. So if you have any issues throughout the workshop and you need to check in with a Witches Confluence person about that, you can privately chat either myself or Karima. I am, sorry, the virtual world just kind of like slipped out from under me there. I am broadcasting from the land of the Shasta Minimem Wintu people, and I invite everyone to acknowledge the indigenous tribes of the land that you are currently occupying. You can do that privately with yourself in this moment, or you can share it in the chat. And so, without further ado, I'd love to welcome Kirah to the Witches Confluence. We're so excited to have you and so excited for this.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in right now. This is so cool. So yeah, I will take a moment to acknowledge the land that I'm on. As soon as I get myself situated. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I'm a newbie to this land. This is the land. This is a land that called me, the super magnetic land that pulled me here a couple months ago, that I am so grateful to be on. I'm broadcasting to you from the ancestral and unceded territory of the Tongva peoples, who were the traditional land caretakers of I'm gonna fuck this up, Tova Nagar, which literally means, it translates to the world, also known as Los Angeles. So that's where I'm at. I'm really, I feel so blessed to be here. I drove across this country in late July and arrived here August 1st. And yeah, I will be here for the foreseeable future. I'm so grateful to be here. And yes, before I was in Los Angeles, I was in New York for the past decade. Yeah, the Lenape people's land. Okay, so let me share my screen. All right. Oop, that's not the screen. Okay, that's the screen. Can you guys see that? Yeah, cool. Okay, so let me get myself situated. Okay. So yeah, thanks for being here. This is my keynote presentation. It's called Timing is Everything, Astrology as a Tool to Understand the Present Moment. Let's see what's next. Me, okay, I'm Kirah, AKA the Astrology, also known as Shakira. That's my name. I grew up as Kirah and recently decided like I'm Kirah, like I need to stop going by Shakira, even though that's my name. I feel like Kirah. So if you're wondering, if you've known me before in the past like year or so and you're like, why did you change to Kirah? It's just, I call myself Kirah, so it made sense to me. I am, let's see, I have a whole thing written out. I'm Black, as you can see. Both my parents are Black. Their parents are Black. Maybe you can't see that, but just so you know, I'm queer, I'm cis, and yeah, I use she, her pronouns. I come from the lands of the Lenape people from the Philadelphia, also known as the Philadelphia area. I just want to kind of give you guys like a little idea of like who I am, I guess. So you just know where I'm coming from. So I'm going to give you a little like background basically. Okay, so I am from the Philly area. I'm from a little suburb of Philadelphia. I went to a small private all-girls school growing up. It was like the school was founded by Ben Franklin's great granddaughter. Um, so just wanted to acknowledge that I had a really privileged education, which, I was one of very few Black girls at that school. So that part wasn't necessarily a privilege, but nevertheless, I had a really good education. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. That's where I'm coming from. And then I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City. I received my Bachelor of Fine Arts in photography there in 2014. And it was while I was in college that when I saw my chart for the first time. So I guess, a little rewind. I'm one of those people who's always been into astrology. I don't know when I figured out that I was a Scorpio, but I feel like it's this information that I've always known. So yeah, like my dad is also a Scorpio, and it's just something, yeah, it's just something that I've always known. But when I was really young, I've also was someone who's always been into birthdays. So birthdays was like my thing. I just knew everyone's birthday. I remember like kids from preschool. I remember their birthdays. I remember my first grade teacher's son's birthday. Like it's just a thing. It was my thing. I remembered birthdays. And I always knew that the time of birth was important too. I don't know why I knew that, but I did. I recently found a letter that I wrote to myself when I was like 8 or 9, and I signed it with my full name, my date of birth, and my time of birth, and my location of birth. Again, I did not know about birth charts or anything at that point. It was just, I just always intuitively knew it was important. So yeah, and then on top of that, my dad has always been into space. And so he had me memorizing like all the planets, their order from the sun, since I was like 8 or 9 years old. So yeah, the vocabulary of the planets have always been there for me too. But it wasn't until I was in college when I learned about, that there was more, that there was a moon sign and a rising sign. I had a friend named Emily, a fellow Scorpio. Her birthday was a couple of days ago, and I was at her house partying with a bunch of other girls, and she's like, "Did you know that there's like other signs? Like like there's a moon sign and then like other signs?" And she had a book, and that night I learned that I was a rising. I was Pisces rising, and I was just like, okay, that makes sense. There's something here. And so a few days later, I was home at my parents', and I remember Googling birth chart calculator and entering my birth info and seeing my chart for the first time. And this is what it looked like. Okay. It was this random website. I was somehow smart enough to screenshot this when it happened and posted it on Facebook. So I actually know the time that I saw my chart for the first time, which is like an astrologer's dream. Okay. But yeah, this is what it looked like. It was, and then you get to click in and like it will show descriptions about each of the planets. But this moment that I saw my birth chart for the first time, I will never forget it. It felt like being witnessed by the universe. It just felt like, okay, this is it. Like, this is it. And I didn't sleep that night. I literally just didn't sleep. I just stayed up all night and was like, I need to learn every single thing I can about this. And here I am 8 years later, still learning. And at this point now teaching, which is wild. But let's see, let me see what else I have to say about this. um, so yeah, I guess, I guess what I wanted to say from that is that astrology came to me at the perfect time in my life. I was it was right before or right after, it was right after I turned 21, I believe. And life was just rough in my early 20s, and I think that a lot of people can resonate with that. I have clients in their early 20s, and a lot of my advice is just like, you're there's nothing wrong with you. Things just kind of suck in your early 20s because you're trying to figure it out, and there's no real answers, and you feel really lost and confused and alone in your early 20s. And so yeah, astrology came at the perfect time because it helped explain what I was going through. It helped like make sense of everything. And although it didn't like make things better necessarily, like astrology didn't like turn my life around in the sense that, all of a sudden I wasn't depressed anymore. All of a sudden I wasn't anxious, but it at least gave me a frame of reference. And more importantly, and we'll get into this, it made me understand like when all of this shittiness was going to end. And that is one of my favorite things about astrology is you can see when the shitty times come to an end, or at least you can see when things are going to change. So yeah, it's like not only was I able to make sense of why I am the way I am, which is also a huge part of astrology. It also was about like making sense of what was happening to me, what was happening in the world, what was happening to my friends, all of that. And yeah, I guess I'll save you the details about how rough how hard I was being hit from like all different directions from the transits in my early 20s. It was a lot, and it happened for years, a couple years. I would say between like 20 and 25 was just like rough. But here I am today, and I'm fine, and it got better, that's for sure. So yeah, I guess I wanted to say that because I'm sure there's a lot of you out there who are getting hit really hard by transits right now. Um, it's I mean, we're all getting hit really hard by these transits. These transits are especially rough, but I know that there's some of you who are like really getting direct hits from a lot of the major players: Saturn, Mars, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, eclipses, like all the things, right? And I I hoped that I hope that this presentation kind of like gives you um a little bit of hope in that, things are going to end, and more than end, things are going to change. There's going to be a shift. And yeah, astrology can help you tap into that. So, let's see. So yeah, my intention today is basically to show you how dope astrology is. I'm just about to like stan astrology this whole for the rest of the night and tell you how cool it is. And in particular, I'm going to talk to you about how cool astrology is in regards to timing. I want to give you an idea of like all that astrology can do, and hopefully that will give you an idea of how you can live a more aligned life and help you understand what you've moved through, what you're currently moving through, and what's to come. And so this is what I do for my clients. And at the end, I'm going to like kind of leave you with a little snippet of some very basic knowledge that you can apply to your own chart and to your life. And hopefully it'll be helpful. That's always my hope. So yeah, this talk is going to be a mix of some macro concepts and then some micro learning at the end. And so what I mean by like macro concepts, I'm talking about astrology, I'm talking about like time as a construct, I'm talking about patterning and spectrums of energy and archetypes and, big concepts like that. And then we're going to get a really detailed look into timing for your individual lives, how you can determine that with astrology, with a little like crash course at the end. So if you don't have your chart or you don't even know how to go about that, I will give you a couple I'll give you a couple links and stuff that you can, hopefully will be helpful. Okay, yeah, and I guess to come back to this, I'm Kirah. I'm an astrologer, I'm an educator, a creative, an author, a friend, a lover, a director, a founder, frequently doing the most. I do too much. And I like to say that. I like to tell people that because I don't want anyone to think that you're supposed to be doing this much. You're not. I just do too much. So keep that in mind. Okay, so what is astrology? Astrology is the study of planetary movements and their correlation to events that happen here on Earth. I was talking to a reporter, a journalist earlier today. He was interviewing me about the election, and he's like, at the end, he's like, I've always been this like, anti-woo, anti-astrology stuff. I'm all about the facts and all that. But I sat down with my cousin once, and she was basically like, how can the planets not affect you? They're so big. And I was like, well, that's not necessarily what astrologers believe. I would say most of the astrologers I know, at least, and I know a lot of astrologers, we don't necessarily think, well, we don't think that the planets cause events on Earth. We're not saying that because the planets are so big and they surround us, like their vibrations cause things to happen on Earth. I personally don't believe that. What I believe is more of a as above, so below approach. And so that looks like, we can see what's happening up there, and it also corresponds to what's happening down here. And by down here, I mean on all levels. So we're talking in the weather, we're talking like global currents, we're talking our politics, and then we're also talking our personal lives, like it's happening within us and without us. We can even talk about like astrology of like the body, like it's happening on all different levels, internally, externally, mentally, physically, all the things. We're talking about spectrums of energy. So yeah, it's as above, so below. There's like a mirroring, a correspondence happening. Yeah, astrology. So yeah, and I guess this is a good time to sort of talk about the type of astrology that I practice. Is it? Like, wait a minute. I get a little bit more into like how I use astrology, but I'll just talk to you about maybe not even the astrology that I practice, but kind of like astrology today. And I'm going to be completely honest, I'm really bad at at history, and I'm really bad at like giving exact facts because my Mercury is, it's not because my Mercury is in detriment, but it's really hard for me to hold on to things without them like right in front of my face. And I'm in like the process of understanding, and like I literally am like in the process of making a timeline of history so I can like see where astrology and the formation of astrology falls on that. But I'm going to keep it super brief right now because we have stuff to do, right? But basically, the astrology we use now dates back to about 4,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, which is sort of, I think it's like the land now known as like Syria, Iraq, like that sort of part of the world. And yeah, they used to use astrology for like omens, and it was also very political. Like they would use it to decide when to go to war, or like that when they would see planets in the sky, when a planet would appear, they would see that as like an omen, which we kind of do that in certain ways now. But through a shit ton of like colonization and yeah, just a lot of colonization over time, we without, I'm not gonna, again, the timeline is escaping me a little bit, but we get to like classical antiquity, and the Greeks, and the Egyptians, and we had this like blending of Indian astrologers, Egyptian, Northern African, European, like I said, Greek, Turkish, like all of these different people and cultures coming together and sharing their knowledge. And when we hit to like classical antiquity times, ancient Greek times, that's when we start to get like the foundation of, or the formulation of like a lot of the techniques that we use today. We get like the houses and what else? We get like everything kind of becomes more concrete, basically. And then we get to like the medieval era, and then the Renaissance, and then at a certain point, astrology kind of, I think it's like the 1700s, astrology kind of just like falls out of fashion. And because of new ideas and, the church becoming stronger and stronger and stronger and all these things, we lost a lot of our of like ancient astrology and the way that the ancients were working with it. And then it kind of like what was left of it was very fragmented. And then we get to the 1900s, and the, I guess like the modern day Renaissance, I don't know if that's the right term, of astrology in the 70s. And that astrology, again, was so far removed from what the ancients were practicing. Only fragments of it remained. And so that astrology, which largely informs the astrology that most of us know today, was very much based on what was popular at that time. So we're talking about Jungian psychology and archetypes, and looking at things in this at a lot more of like a personal developmental way. Freud, Jung, all that stuff. And so again, there's nothing wrong with that astrology, obviously. Like I think a lot of us have gotten a lot out of that sort of perspective of looking at the chart as this map for personal self-development, this map of the psyche and the soul. And I think it can 100% be used that way. But then, okay, so fast forward to the 1990s, we get this thing called the Renaissance, or it's not the Renaissance Project, God. We get this thing called Project Hindsight. I don't know where that came from. Project Hindsight. And we got a bunch of these three guys, Robert Schmidt, Zoller. I'm sorry, I forget the last one. I'm going to be talking to Chris Brennan all about this for my podcast in like a week or so. So I will get it right eventually. But basically the Project Hindsight happened. And what that was a bunch of astrologers, these like really super smart astrologers who know ancient languages, started to translate all of these old texts. And they would get together and just translate together. And Chris Brennan was part of that. When he was really young. He's still, young, but yeah, when he was way younger. Demetra George was part of that. I have Chris's book and Demetra George's book right here in front of me, holding up my microphone. So they're huge. They're a huge part of my, teachers. But yeah, so this Project Hindsight was like fucking amazing, because all of a sudden we have translations of these texts from ancient times, and we get to see how the ancients were using astrology, and we get to see how there's this whole system in place that allows us to be super precise in our delineations. And yeah, it kind of opened up a whole new world for astrology. So fast forward to current times, we got the traditional astrology revival that we're living through currently. And part of that is like all the millennial, not all of them, but a lot of millennial and Gen Z astrologers are trad chads. And what that means is like traditional chads. We make fun of ourselves basically for being nerds about traditional astrology and Hellenistic astrology, but it's just the coolest thing. And so I'm personally very committed to, that the revival and sharing this ancient knowledge that we have, because it's great and it's super useful. It's like my favorite tool ever. So I wanted to I wanted to show like the difference between ancient astrology versus contemporary astrology. And basically what that difference is that ancient astrology was very fate and event based, whereas contemporary astrology, also referred to as modern astrology, is a lot more personality, personal development based. So like I said, like modern contemporary is more about like, oh, my Mars is here and that might mean that like my anger, like that's why I, you know, have so much drive and passion, because my Mars is in Scorpio, you know, which is like, you know, that's true. Event or ancient astrology is more about, okay, so what type of events are going to occur in your life based off of the time you were born. And when we're talking about fate, it's like, what are you destined to encounter? And part of that means like, what is and what isn't possible for you as a human. And that can be really scary to like approach astrology that way, right? It's like, I had this like weird, it's not weird, but when I was watching Westworld a lot during quarantine, and I was just like, oh wow, holy shit, this reminds me so much of astrology, because it's all about like, you know, you have a code, and the humans like live according to their code, and like the birth chart is the code, right? Like it basically, the perspective is that like you, I guess I'll use this what is it called? Not metaphor, but comparison. I don't know. Again, the words. But basically it's like, you know, you can't expect a goldfish to climb a tree, right? So there's certain things in the chart that you're just not destined for. Um, and that's okay. And there's certain things in the chart that you are destined for. And the way that the ancients approached astrology was very much about like, what's your fate? What's your destiny? Like how well are you going to be able to carry out the events that you want to bring about in your life? So yeah, there's that. Okay, so let's talk about what can astrology do. Short answer is a whole lot. So we're going to take a look at the 4 main branches of astrology. And yeah, any astro students out here, take note. So yeah, the 4 branches of astrology. We have mundane astrology. So that's the study of world events. This includes astrology related to country, city, states, politics, weather events. You know, if there were like, it's basically everything mundane, meaning, excuse me, not personal. So an example would be like, you know, talking about the astrology of the US presidential election. That's mundane astrology. Talking about the astrology of a country's formation, because you can look at charts. I think the oldest chart, one of the oldest was the founding of the city of Baghdad, which is like a chart you can I'm pretty sure it was elected, which we'll get to electional astrology. But yeah, so it's like anything like that, having to do with like the astrology of, you know, things happening out in the world, the stock market, like mundane stuff. And then we get to electional astrology, which is like very near and dear to me. I'm such an electional astrology nerd. So electional astrology is the act of choosing a specific moment in time to begin something. And so I use this a lot. I use electional astrology every day for the most part. Before I send emails, I check the chart. And if the chart isn't, you know, ideal, I will kind of scroll forward and be like, oh, this is a little bit better for sending this email. Or signing this paperwork. So I'm going to elect this time to begin or to send this out or to do whatever. So for example, what's a good electional example? There's so many. Launching my website earlier this year. So I relaunched my website. I picked that date and time, basically a moment in time to begin it. I picked that like sometime last year. Like I knew that was a good day. I knew the astrology of 2020 was pure shit, and so you had to get you know, you have to get where you can, basically. And that was a really good day, and I chose to relaunch my website on that day and time. So yeah, it's like beginning something. You can do this for, and I would highly suggest doing it for marriage or anything important that you want to make sure that it like starts off on a good note. It's all about reading the energy of a moment and yeah, choosing to begin something in a future date. I've elected breakups, I've elected sex, I've elected quitting jobs. Like it's about taking advantage of time, really, in my opinion. And then there's horary astrology. This type of astrology is cool. Like this is the coolest shit, but I don't know it. I know the very basics of it, but I haven't studied it. It's something like I want to take a class on it and not teach myself. Oh, I didn't say that before, but I'm self-taught in astrology too. So yeah. And I say I'm self-taught, meaning I never took like a course or anything. Like I didn't have a direct teacher student relationship, but um what that really means is that I have a shit ton of teachers. They're just indirect teachers. So I've read a lot of books, I've attended a lot of webinars and conferences, and I would say even like reading tweets and, you know, blog posts and all the things like, yeah, sorry I didn't say that before. So yeah, horary astrology. Answering a question based on the astrological chart cast when the question is asked. So if someone were to be like, Kirah, where's my wallet? I lost my wallet. Where is my wallet? I could pull up the chart for this very moment that I understood the question and look at that chart and deduce from that chart where your wallet is. And this shit works. Like it's wild. It blows my mind every single time I see it happen. I have a really good friend, astrologer, Bear River. He had just taken this horary astrology course, and I was bugging out. I was at my mom's house, my parents' house, and I lost my keys and I needed to leave and I could not find them. And so I called him. I'm like, I can't find them. Like, this is the chart. Please help me. And he was able to figure out that it's attached to your mom. It's something to do with your mom. It's in a dark place. Have you checked her purse? Lo and behold, the keys. So yeah, horary astrology is fucking dope, guys. Like, and there's a lot of really, really good horary astrologers out there. And yeah, if you're not on Twitter, like that's where all the astrologers hang out. So if you're looking for a good astrologer, Twitter is the place to be. And then finally, we get to natal astrology. And this is the astrology that almost all of you know. Astrology relates to human beings' natal chart, also referred to as a nativity, cast for the moment of birth. So from natal astrology, we get like a trillion other branches of astrology: medical astrology, psychological, evolutionary, so on and so forth. Like we can do so much with a birth chart, with a nativity. Yeah, so those are the four branches of astrology, and that kind of gives you a very brief idea of like all that astrology can do. Very brief, very top level. Yeah, because if I kept going, we would be here all night. So let's talk about how I use astrology. Short answer is to plan and understand my life, and to know when and how to act, and also when to rest, when to not act. I was like, what's the better way of saying not to act? Because that's what I really wanted to say, but rest sounds better, I guess. So yeah, I use it for basically everything. I plan my life using astrology. And yeah, so I'm a planner. I have a prominent Virgo placement in my chart, and I just like to plan. It's just who I am. Some people might see this as limiting, you know, kind of checking the charts all the time and planning my life based on the planets. But me, with my Saturn privilege, I see it as containing. And let me explain Saturn privilege for a second, because this is something that I very recently, during my 12th house Saturn return this year, came to understand is that I have Saturn privilege. And what that means is I have a really good relationship with Saturn, the greater malefic. Not everyone has a good relationship with Saturn. And I want to acknowledge that. When I say I have Saturn privilege, Saturn is the most dignified planet in my chart. And so by that, I mean it's in its own sign, in Aquarius, and Saturn rules both Aquarius and Capricorn, but you can argue that Saturn prefers Aquarius, because it is, I'm getting astro speak, so ignore me if you don't get this, but Aquarius is Saturn's diurnal domicile. Saturn's a daytime planet. Aquarius is like a diurnal sign. Saturn really likes the daytime. So yeah, I have Saturn in Aquarius. It's direct. It's not retrograde. It is in a day chart. So Saturn will show up as less malefic, more protective, for you if you're born in the daytime, meaning the sun is above the horizon. It's visible. And also I have my Saturn in the 12th house, which is the house of its joy. That's where Saturn rejoices. It's a lot of the associations of the 12th house come from Saturn. So I have Saturn in like a really great position. It's kind of just hanging out in the 12th house all by itself, not really getting any harsh aspects from other planets. It's just chilling. Sign-based trine to Venus, like it's pretty good. And Saturn is a planet that is referred to as the Lord of Time. The Lord of Time. Kronos is another name for Saturn, and you can think of like Chronos, like chronological. There's some what are some other Chronos words? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and think about that, but basically trying to say that like, yeah, Saturn rules time, and by that I mean like the linear construction of time. So with me and my Saturn privilege, I see astrology and time in general as a system through which I can navigate through, as opposed it's like it's a contained system that I can navigate through, as opposed to a prison that I'm trying to escape. So yeah, when we're talking about like the construct of time, because I think, we can agree that time is a construct and all that jazz. um, but yeah, it's a construct that I have an easier time navigating than I think not everyone does, basically. And I can kind of use it to my advantage, or I find it easier at least to use to my advantage, and to navigate within that construct. I kind of like, I can take advantage of it, and I think astrology in general helps you take advantage of it. Yeah, I could go on and on about Saturn. I'm like trying to limit myself, Saturn. But yeah, so like I wanted to acknowledge my Saturn privilege, because it's not easy for everyone. I'm not going to act like it's like, yeah, just like make time your friend, just like operate within this construct. Like it's so easy. It's easy for me. I don't think it's easy for everyone. So yeah, it's not easy for everyone to have a good relationship with linear time in the way that I do, but I've been able to intentionally make friends with Saturn, and I find ways to thrive within that construct instead of fighting against it. And I'm able to do that because of astrology. Yeah, timing is just like a huge deal to me. So yeah, and I think the reason why I love astrology so much is because, like I said, it allows you to like tap into the flow of time. And like I'm kind of picturing like time as like a Saturnian construct, is kind of like this maze almost, with like these walls that you can't really see past. Because all you can do is go forward when we're talking about time. At least that's what it feels like. But yeah, it's like I feel like astrology allows me to be in flow with it and like enjoy the flow a little bit more, or at least like take advantage, like I said, as opposed to fighting against it and, you know, having bad timing, right? So astrology lets us know when to act or when not to act. It shows trends and patterns on multiple scales so that we can get a well-rounded sense of what action to take, and then when to yield, when to pause. And it also shows it also shows like, you know, so yeah, it shows like when I should like take action, right? It also shows me when I should do nothing. And that's great. Like astrology allows me to know how to plan when to not have plans, if that makes sense. So like for example, I see my 12th house being lit up in January and February. I'm having my final exact Saturn return in January, and then a million planets, basically all of them, are going to be in Aquarius come Aquarius season. And that's my 12th house. And I know, because I know astrology, that I'm not going to want to be out and about working, doing a bunch of shit when there's a million planets in my 12th house. I'm going to probably be coming apart from the inside out and not leaving my couch and like, you know, stuffing my face with like Oreos and just smoking a lot of weed, all of that. I'm not going to want to do anything. So, and maybe I will want to do something that I can't even conceive of right now, but I know that it's going to be a time where I'm not going to want to have a lot of things on my plate. So I can plan to have no plans. I can plan to use that time to like do whatever the fuck comes up during a 12th, major 12th house transit. Um, and yeah, that allows me to kind of like be in flow. And so I use, let me see if I have another slide around this. Yes. So I use a combination of a shit ton of astrology techniques. I use transits, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably know of. That means like a transit basically means the planetary movement that's happening currently, or that's, you know, yeah, that's happening currently. So right now, for instance, the sun is transiting through the sign Scorpio. Right now, Mercury is transiting retrograde. It's currently in Libra. Yeah, and then it's going to go back and transit through Scorpio, things like that. And we can also talk about transits like in relation to our charts. So I'm currently, Jupiter is in Capricorn. It's been transiting my 11th house. I'm a Pisces rising, Capricorn's my 11th house. So transits. I also use secondary progressions. I use annual and monthly perfections from both my ascendant and my sect light. I use lunations. I use zodiacal releasing. I use a lot of shit basically. And with astrology, there's so many tools that you can use. But I've pretty much like figured out the best way to combine all of these tools. I didn't add solar returns in there, but yes, I use solar returns a lot too. um and then so yeah, and then I mix it with other tools, right? Like I gotta get more validation. So on top of all the astrology, I mix it with tarot from both myself and others, psychic experiences, and then the guidance of many different channels and readers that I love, who are super talented, and then mix all that with my own intuitive knowing, and all of these tools put together help really validate my intuition, because I think that's kind of what all of us are seeking when we're using any tool. It's just a validation of what we already feel inside. And that is, yeah, that's pretty much how I use astrology too. Like, you know, I have this like feeling, you know, I had this feeling for a long time that I wasn't probably not going to have kids till I'm like 35, 36, right? And then I dig into the astrology and I see like on multiple scales, like that's when it looks like I'm probably going to have kids. So we'll see. Give me like 5 more years, 5, 6 more years to to check in on me about that. But yeah, we can, you know, it kind of validates our internal knowings. Whew, okay, let's see. Oh, and I didn't even add that I use electional astrology a lot too, but we already said that. Okay. Yeah, I wonder if it's helpful for me to go into that a little bit more. I will just give like a one example of like how I use no, I'm not actually. Forget it. I want to keep going. Okay. So what is astrology good for? Short answer, a ton of things, like a whole bunch of things. Here are some examples. So personally, you can use astrology to kind of answer these questions. When should I move? When will I meet my person? When will I get a new job? These are like top level, you know, things that people ask a lot and from astrologers and from any sort of reader. But with astrology, again, we can tap into the timing in a way that is like very precise. And we'll talk about how to even like go about answering these questions at the end when we get into the you know, workshop section. But yeah, it's good for all of these things, like these personal sort of questions. It's also good for interpersonal things, like what's up with my partner. You know, we can figure out the dynamic between you know, your partner and yourself with synastry and composite charts and all that. But say your partner is just off, there's something off with them, and you're not really sure what's going on. Astrology can help figure that out. Why is my 23-year-old brother so sad and lost? Well, with astrology, we know 23 is the 12th house year. You're in the 12th house when you're 23, and when you're 11, and when you're 35, and what's the next one? 47, yeah. And so on. So yeah, we can know like, oh, he's in the 12th house, like he's in a 12th house year. People tend to be pretty sad, lost, confused when they're 23. That's that's a constant in my opinion. When is a good day next week to have sex? Another good way to use astrology. If you're not planning your sex by the moon, I don't know what you're doing. Hint, the best days are probably when the moon is in a water sign. That's going to be juicy. Just putting it out there. We can also look at it like, you know, politically, mundanely. What's happening in my country? Well, here in the US, we're going through our Pluto return, our first ever Pluto return. Pluto takes about 141 years to cycle through the whole zodiac. And last time that happened, last time Pluto was here in late Capricorn was when the US was founded, quote unquote. So it's when the Constitution was signed, I'll say that. And we have a chart for the United States. It's contested. We have a couple charts that different astrologers use, but I think with all the charts, we're still in the middle of our Pluto return. It hasn't even fully begun, but I guess the exact return hasn't begun. But yeah, Pluto, death, destruction, complete change from a cellular level. And it's in the US's second house, which is finances, money, resources, so such things like that. So what's happening in the US? We're in the middle of our Pluto return. Everything's changing. And that's a good thing that everything is changing here. When is the economy going to recover? Well, you know, we can see historically, every time Jupiter's in Capricorn, the economy goes to shit. So yeah, we can see like trends like that. What do the next 2 months look like politically? Well, again, here in the US, I just can't help but think about the fact that we have these two eclipses happening in November and December, and they happen to activate both presidential candidates charts and both VP candidates charts too. So yeah, we'll see about that. I'm not going to get into it, but I just released a podcast episode about it. So if you want to if you want to listen to that, it's out there. And okay, so yeah, what else is it good for? Generational things, like why does it seem like everyone I know is suffering through similar growing pains? So in a generational level, we can look at like trends, right? Um, for one, I think of like when Jupiter was in Scorpio in 2018. That's when we kind of had this huge witch wave, right? Like that's when there seemed to be this awakening of um, us like younger witches, right? And what do all of us have in common? Pluto and Scorpio, millennial are the Pluto and Scorpio generation. So when Jupiter came through and like activated all of our Plutos, it really awakened this this like massive witch wave, you know, in 2000. No one was doing this. I mean, you guys were probably doing this, but like not on this scale. Like I had no idea prior to like 2017, I would say, that there were so many people, especially in my generation, who like cared about this shit, who loved astrology and the moon and tarot and crystals and all of the things like magic. Um, until Jupiter passed through Scorpio, and then I was like, oh, we all kind of like woke up and came out of the closet and found each other. And a similar thing happened with Gen Z when Jupiter went through Sagittarius in 2019. Like the Gen Z seemed to like waken up with that because Gen Z has Pluto and Sag. And then we can look at like Saturn returns as like generational coming of age times too. So everyone who was born between 88 and like early 91, I believe. I think that's correct. Not everyone. Those aren't exact dates, but for the most part, has Saturn in Capricorn, and you guys have all collectively been going through your Saturn returns together. So us Saturn and Aquarius is, we started ours this year, and we're going to continue that over the next 2 years as Saturn moves through Aquarius. And so everyone born, you know, between 1991 and 93 who have Saturn and Aquarius, we're all sort of going through this like coming of age, like growing up period altogether. And then there's other things like, you know, excuse me, Uranus transits affecting generational markers. Excuse me, God. Like, you know, for Gen Z, they're moving through, or a good chunk of them, the older ones at least, are moving through their Uranus square, the opening square. So Uranus is in this 90-degree angle to where Uranus was when they were born. Older Gen Z, I guess like, yeah, by older, I mean like the first, 8 years of Gen Z have Uranus in Aquarius. And so now Uranus is in Taurus, squaring that. They're all waking up in their own way. This need for individuation, this need to contradict the established norms. Like that's normal. Everyone goes through that when they're like between 20 and 23, basically. Uranus, the people who have Uranus and Scorpio in their mid 40s, everything's changing from that for them because Uranus is opposing them. So this whole generation of folks, you know, born within the 8 years that Uranus was in Scorpio are getting this activation right now by the opposition from Uranus. And then same with like the millennials, Pluto and Scorpio. We all have Pluto and Scorpio being opposed by Uranus over these next 5 years. In, you know, waking us up, galvanizing us to confront oppression in a way and in a completely new angle, from a new angle. So yeah, generationally, it can be helpful too. And yeah, this is my favorite thing that astrology is good for. And I mentioned this earlier, identifying the end of shitty times, or at least when we can expect a shift. a shift from the shit. So yeah, it's good for knowing when things begin. And more importantly, like I said, it's good for knowing when things end. And it's helpful to know that the shittiness that you're experiencing right now won't last forever. The bad situations might last for a seemingly long time, but even then, we know it's not forever. And yeah, like this has gotten me through some of the worst times in my life, is knowing that there's an end to it. So yeah, I want to just kind of shout out some especially shitty transits that we're moving through right now. And again, this is stuff like, yeah, okay, I'll get to that. So I think most of you know we're in the middle of a Mars retrograde. And towards the beginning of this Mars retrograde in September, Mars was in this exact square with Saturn. Mars was slowing down and stopping in Aries, and Saturn was slowing down and stopping to go direct in Capricorn. And those two signs square each other. And so we still have it, I think, this massive like frustration, this inner like frustration with just the way things are. We've had this intense lack of motivation, lack of energy, drive, being more aware of our responsibilities, but not sure how to even go about them. It's like, I know I need to do this thing, but like, how do I even begin to do that? I don't have what I need to go about that, or things just aren't moving forward. Retrograde shit. We had Saturn conjunct Pluto in January of this year, earlier this year. Major death energy, major like destruction of all established structures. We're moving through that collectively. And it's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, I don't even have to say that, you're all here. You've seen what's been going on this year. We have Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. Rough retrograde. Lots of shit coming out. And in Scorpio especially, I mean, when Mercury retrogrades, it's cool because it only lasts for 3 weeks or so, but Mercury retrogrades in Scorpio, or any retrogrades in Scorpio, are especially difficult because it tends to bring up stuff like and like a very like, I guess mundane level, like sewage issues, plumbing issues. Mention in the chat if you had any plumbing or sewage issues in the last 3 weeks. I just got hot water in my shower. Like I just was able to get my shower. I didn't do it. I had them come fix it. Hot water. I just took my first hot shower here. I've been here for a month in this current place that I'm living. Just had my first hot shower in a month. And I waited until halfway. I purposely waited to keep calling them because I didn't want to keep calling them because I knew it was a retrograde. And I was like, if I call them over again, it's not going to happen. I'm going to have to keep calling them over. So I waited till the halfway point, which was last Sunday. And then they came and fixed it. I needed them to come one more time, and they did, because that's what happens with Mercury retrogrades. You have to do things multiple times. Like nothing happens just once. But I finally have a hot shower. I'm really happy about it. Thanks, Mercury. And of course, it took like Mercury leaving Scorpio, slipping back into Libra for things to like finally work out with my shower. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this is knowing that this stuff is happening is really important, because then you can cut yourself some slack, and you can cut other people in your life some slack. And that's really important, because yeah, that's all we can really do a lot of the time. It's just kind of like hold space and yeah, just know that like basically like empathy, right? Empathy and compassion. Every single person, every single animal, every single living thing, every single non-living thing, everything on this beautiful green earth is experiencing these transits right now. Like literally everything. The transits are happening, right? We're all feeling it. It's affecting every single solitary being. How it's affecting us is all different, but no one is exempt, right? So knowing that it's happening, knowing that you're going through shitty times, other people probably are too in other ways. Whether it be physical or mental, whether you can see it or not, whether it's happening in their home, or whether they're the ones being the perpetrators. Like, regardless, we're all feeling it. And so just kind of like holding that and having compassion and empathy for that. Um, and at this point, I want to just kind of like send some love, send some love out to people going through some shitty placement or city transits, right? So to all my lovely Aries placements, I'm an Aries moon, so I feel you. Um, I know you're getting wrecked by this cardinal crunch. And by cardinal crunch, I mean Mars in Aries and then Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, and Capricorn all squaring one another. I know you're getting wrecked by it. I know that Mars retrograde is adding a lot of extra heat. Um, I know that it's frustrating as fuck to not just be like moving forward and doing all the things that you want to do. I know Saturn and Capricorn is making you feel trapped, like you're in this box that's overheating. Um, it's going to end soon. My Taurus placements, my beautiful, beautiful Taurus placements. Uranus is shaking up your world right now, especially Taurus risings, especially anyone who has their moon or sun in early Taurus, in the first 10 degrees of Taurus. Um, Everything's changing, and I know how terrifying that is for you, Taurus people, because all you want is for things to just stay the same. And when I tell my Taurus friends, especially the Taurus risings, that everything's changing, I feel really bad because I see the look on their faces like, I don't want that. Uranus is just shaking up your world right now, and I know that you're feeling a lot of anxiety. I know you're feeling just overstimulated. Your nervous systems are probably not handling this that well because you're not used to change happening like this. Um, Uranus is here to liberate you and release you from things that just aren't serving you anymore. So keep that in mind. It's happening for you. My Gemini placements, my loves. Um, you're being activated right now by the North Node, and that can be really overstimulating. And again, nervous system stuff, like that's a lot. And then on top of that, Neptune in Pisces has been squaring my Gemini people, my Gemini placements, and that's been casting this mental fog, like fogging up all of your mental clarity. And not to mention Mercury retrograde, your ruling planet spinning backwards in the sky. Not fun. So I'm sending you love to my Gemini placements. Cancer placements. You're also in the ringer from the cardinal crunch from Mars and Saturn. And I'm sure you feel like you're being hit from all different directions and finding a hard time to, find some reprieve. This is going to end soon too. Cancers, all of your cardinal placements have been through a lot. So yeah, we're almost there. My Leo placements who are just trying to keep it together and trying to still shine brightly despite all the change that's being flung their way by Uranus, and soon by Saturn. Hang in there. Again, with my fixed sign loves, Uranus is doing this to liberate us, to revolutionize our lives, to shake things up so that we're not clutching onto things that just aren't working anymore. So keep that in mind, my lovely Leos. My Virgo placements, very near and dear. You've been fighting the Neptune fog for a long time, right? And I know that you're praying for some clarity. Lean into it, lean into the confusion, lean into the like psychedelic beauty that Neptune can bring for you. The fog's going to lift eventually, and you'll see the reason for all of it. Libra placements, who are, you guessed it, also being smacked around by the cardinal crunch. I know you're just trying to grasp onto some sense of normalcy, and I don't blame you for that. No one should blame you for that. Again, this cardinal crunch, we're almost through it. Things changed dramatically in December, so just hang in there. Hang in there. Scorpio placements, my brethren and sisterin and siblings in. I am too a Scorpio. My Scorpio placements. Okay, so especially Scorpio risings too. I know you feel like you probably shouldn't feel as drained as you do right now, as drained and fatigued as you do right now, but you can blame Mars retrograde for that. Your ruling planet is retrograde, and us Martians, us Aries and Scorpio people, we're not used to having to slow down. We're used to being able to just do all the things, fly forward as fast as we need, and with Mars retrograde, which only happens every 2 years. So again, we're not used to this. um, we're forced to slow down and sort of reevaluate a lot of things and sort of re-strategize. So we only have like a couple weeks left, 2 weeks left of it. Yeah, actually in 2 weeks from today, Mars stations direct. So we're almost there, my Martians. My Sag placements, again, very, very near and dear. I know that you've been fighting all year long to just stay positive and stay optimistic. And I know how fucking hard that must be. Not only because 2020 is 2020, but because like your ruling planet Jupiter has been in the sign of its fall all year. And that's really hard. It's hard to squeeze goodness out of Jupiter and Capricorn because it's already like having a really hard time providing the blessings that it's used to providing for us. So hang in there. In 2 months, less than 2 months, Jupiter is going to be out of Capricorn, and it's not going to be fallen. It's not going to be in the ditch anymore where it can't really provide everything that it wants to provide. It'll have more capacity for blessing us. So hang in there, Sag. We're almost there. And not to mention also, you're dealing with a Neptune fog, the square from Neptune and Pisces, and the South Node moving through Sagittarius. And that's going to be there until for the next year, until the end of next year. So then we get an eclipse, and we're getting eclipses in Sag. Like Sag, I love you. My Sag placements. Hug your Sag friends, or send them if you can't hug them because of COVID. Don't hug them, but send them a text, call them, actually call them or FaceTime them, and say to their face that you love them and that, it's going to be okay. Because as Jupiterians are like really, we're having a hard time staying optimistic this year. My Capricorn placements. You guys are just so tired. You're tired. You're tired of all the pressure. You're tired of carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. I know you're just exhausted. It's been a long, long, long 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, 2 years, 2.5, whatever. Since Saturn's been in Capricorn since December 2017. So that's 3 years. Yeah. Yeah. Again, almost there. Saturn is switching signs December 17th, I believe. And that weight, that pressure isn't going to be as heavy as it is right now. My Aquarius loves, my weirdos. I know you've been gritting your teeth, dealing with Uranus just hurling curveballs at you. And I know you're also anticipating the Jupiter and Saturn entering Aquarius, and things just changing. And again, my fixed signs, we don't like unexpected change. Like that is the one thing we're just like, please no. And yeah, I implore you to, I think again with Uranus wants to liberate us. So as hard as it is, if we can allow change to happen, that's going to be easier than trying to, swim against the wave. And then finally, my lovely, sweet Pisces placements, who, just like the Sages, are trying to remain hopeful, trying to remain optimistic with your ruling planet, Jupiter, in fall. It's hard. It's hard to provide the positivity and the spirit that you're used to being able to provide for others. And I know that these Pisces placements, we're just struggling to try and heal everyone else and forgetting about our own needs. So, um, remember that you have to fill your own cup, Pisces. You need to drink water, Pisces. You need to eat food. And yeah, I'm talking to myself too. Um, it's important. It's important. We are all in this together. We're all feeling it. Um, yeah, it's a lot. So remember that, and tell your friends that you love them, please. So yeah, I guess I forgot the slide, but astrology is also good for figuring out how to move through shitty times with ease. Are you giving me a time check? Okay. How much time do I have?
Well,
Yeah.
technically 15 till 8 o'clock, but
Okay.
we can take some questions. Maybe if there's other things you want to like dive into for an extra bit, we could do that.
Yes, yeah. I'm just seeing where I'm at. Okay, yeah. So we can take some questions if we have questions, because then we're gonna dive into chart stuff.
Totally.
Cool.
Yeah, and we have some like basic kind of questions.
Mhm.
One being, what house sign system do you use?
Yeah, whole sign houses, whole sign houses, whole sign houses, whole sign. I'm all about it.
And the other sort of one was a question about how to draw a chart if you don't know the exact time of birth.
Cool. Yeah. I if you don't know the exact time, there's a couple of things. So it's like, do you know a rounded time? Do you know, if it's between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m., that might be helpful. We can sort of, we can it goes from like how much do you know, and then the more and more you know, the more precise you can get. But if you don't know a time at all, I always suggest doing a sunrise chart. So basically setting it so the sun was on the eastern horizon, and you can get a lot out of a solar or sunrise chart. But yeah, it's like, I mean, I always say talk to an astrologer about it. I will also say that Chris Brennan, who hosts the Astrology podcast, has a whole podcast episode about what to do if you don't have a birth time or you don't have an exact birth time. So I would point you in that direction for sure. There's also something called rectification in astrology, where an astrologer can rectify your chart and sort of like, based off of events that have happened to you in your life, they can kind of sort of figure out what your birth time might have been. So yeah, that's also a service that a lot of astrologers offer.
Sweet.
Which
Yeah.
podcast which you referring to? Just
Uh,
quickly.
the the astrology podcast.
Oh,
Not to be confused with my podcast, The Astrology Show. But yeah, the astrology podcast, it's like probably the most popular astrology podcast out there.
And then another question about placements.
Mhm.
So I guess, what do you mean when you refer to placements? And then there's a question here that's also asking if the placements can reference to other planets rather than just like the luminaries.
Yeah. Okay. So when I say placement, sorry, I guess I should have expanded on that. I mean, like any planet that you have in that sign, but I am definitely referring mostly to people who have their sun, moon, or rising in that sign. Also, people who have their chart ruler in any of those signs, and we're going to talk about chart rulers in these following slides. But yeah, mostly saying sun, moon, rising. SMR is what I like to say. Yeah, is that helpful?
That's great.
Cool.
Yeah, and I guess now might be a good time to just share any like basic apps or places that people can draw charts? So
Yeah, I have a slide for it.
oh, great. Maybe we could just continue then.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so at this point, we're going to dive into your personal timing. And basically, the goal for this is to get you to see the chart in a way that can be used for better timing. So get out your chart if you have your chart, and I'm going to show you, let's see, whip out your chart. Okay. So here I listed 2 websites and 2 apps that you can use to pull up your chart. Note that CoStar is not on this list. I will just say that. I will never recommend that app. It does not show you your actual chart. Its calculations are very, very often wrong. Just don't use it. Astro.com is the #1 website that I would recommend. It's free and it has so many tools. It's like it's one of the best tools out there for anyone into astrology. Astroseek.com is also another great website with a ton of tools, and they just actually changed it so that you can use they them pronouns, basically, because usually like on most of these it's like, are you a man, are you a woman, or are you an event? And that's the case for astro.com, or it says other. For Astroseek now has it so you can input they them pronouns or any other pronouns. You can like edit that as well. So love that. I always have to shout out Peter at Astroseek. He's great. Time Passages is an app that I believe is only available on Apple iOS. And then Time Nomad is another app. I don't know if it's available on Android. I know I keep forgetting. But there's tons of apps out there. And so, yeah, pull up your chart. And then I would say to switch the house system to whole signs. And that's really important here. I use whole signs because mainly I'll say I use it because the techniques that I use, you basically need to use whole sign for it. And it resonates so deeply with me. Like when I started to use whole signs for my own chart, everything clicked into place and I was like, yes, this is me. A lot of astrologers use both or 2 different house systems. You can look at your chart in the quadrant system and then like kind of mentally put it in whole signs, but I just use whole signs. So when you're looking at your chart, let me see if I can pull up actually a chart that I can, I'm going to pull up my chart. And usually I would show you, let's see if it's working. The software that I use, I love it a lot, but it's currently, today just stopped working, which, thanks Mercury for that. But let's see, I'm going to show you my chart. And I'm pulling it up so that doesn't have a bunch of extra shit on it. Okay. Okay, cool. So I'm going to share a different screen that has my astrology on it. Where are we? Okay. Nope. Okay, cool. So this is my chart. And I basically wanted to, let's see. Sorry, guys. I have like a trillion different windows. I wanted to do like basic Astro 101 with you. So we got planet, signs, houses. Ignore the aspects for now. That's another workshop. But yeah, planet, signs, and houses, right? So on this outer wheel, we'll always find the signs. And basically what this wheel represents is the zodiac belt. The zodiac belt is a span of constellations that go across, how do I say this? Yeah, basically it's just like a band, a strip of constellations that go around the sky. And yeah, I'm not going to get into tropical versus sidereal. But basically, yeah, the signs. We have 12 signs. Each sign takes up a chunk of the sky, an equal chunk of the sky. It's basically you have this a circle is 360 degrees, right? So we have 12 sign. Each sign takes up a 30-degree chunk of that wheel. And then at any given moment, the planets are placed within or placed inside of one of the signs. So I wish I could show you the chart of the moment. I'm so upset that Luna, like my software is not working. But yeah, so at any given moment, the planets are in a certain sign. They're never in two signs. Cusps aren't a thing, okay? They're either in one or the other. So as you can see, when I was born, the sun was in Scorpio. My birthday is in a couple weeks. Excuse me. Venus was in Libra, where it's at right now. Jupiter was in Virgo when I was born. So like all the planets are in a sign, basically. And then we have houses. So the houses are determined based. What's the word? Okay, I'm not going to try to say that. It's basically based off of like where in the sky is this happening. And this is really important in regards to like location, because where the sun is right now, somewhere beneath the earth, right? It's sunset over here at least. And another place in the world, the sun is high up in the sky, and so, or at least maybe like rising right now. So yeah, it's important to kind of like understand that this is all based off of perspective from the location that you're at, or the location that you were at. And there's this cool thing. I hope this isn't going to confuse everyone, but there's this cool thing called like locational astrology and astrocartography, and we can look at if I was born in this exact same moment but in another place on Earth, what would my chart look like? Everything would still be the same, but it would shift. It it would look different because of the location. So houses are very much word I'm trying to use is like terrestrial. Yeah. So we have 12 houses, and again, we're dividing the sky up into 12 equal segments. Not always equal. It's if you're using a different house system, they won't be equal. But so the first house is the house of self, and that is the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon. That's going to be the sign in the first house. And then you can see here the AC symbol. That symbol represents the eastern horizon. Directly opposite that would be the western horizon. And so we kind of established this this horizon line here through the middle of the chart horizontally. Everything above that horizon line is up in the sky. Like that's all that stuff we can see. Everything below the horizon line, so you can think of like the sun sets over here in the west, that's all underneath the earth, the stuff that is happening on the subterranean level. We can't see it. Yeah, as you can see, most of the planets were above the horizon when I was born, except my moon. So yeah. And then so we have the 12 houses, and I'm going to show you a house wheel, but basically that's like the very bare minimum basics of astrology. We got these planets at any given moment. The planets are in a sign. And then based off of where you are on Earth, we can see like what house that falls in, or where in the sky those planets are. And the houses correlate to areas of life. And I'll show you what that means. Okay, so stop share and come back to my presentation. Okay. Okay, cool. So planet signs houses, cool. And then we're going to identify the first house. So the first house, again, it's the point on the eastern horizon. And in your chart, that's going to be the house that's on the left side of the chart. You'll probably see a 1 in the inside circle somewhere. And yeah, that's your rising sign. So the first house, the rising sign, the ascendant, whatever you want to call it, super, super, super important in astrology. And this is why we need a birth time for the most part, because it speaks to, that sign that was rising at the moment of birth. Um, and the planet that rules that sign are super important. That's the first house is the house of self. And let me kind of dig into that a little bit more. So the eastern horizon, right? That's where birth happens. That's where the sun rises. That's where planets like re-enter the world, not sub, what's opposite of sub? That basically, everything that we can see above the horizon. Um, so yeah, when you're born and you take your first breath and you breathe in the energy of that moment, there's this sort of like symbolic thing happening where your spirit is fully physically incarnated into your physical body. And if you think about the Eastern Horizon line, um, that's where heaven meets earth, right? That's where the sky meets earth, spirit meeting matter. So again, there we have this idea of like spirit kind of taking shape, taking form, and then like crystallizing. Okay, I lose my breath often. So thinking about that sign, the rising sign, the sign on the eastern horizon, the first house, what modality is that sign? Meaning, is it cardinal, mutable, or fixed? So all of the signs have a modality and an element. Um, the modality speaks to sort of like the direction that the energy is moving in, the quality of the energy. So cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. And cardinal energy is the energy that initiates, it starts things. And you think about those four signs, when the sun enters those four signs, that's when we get when the sun enters Aries, we get the spring equinox, the beginning of spring. When the sun enters Cancer, we get the summer solstice, the beginning of summer, what initiates summer. When it enters Libra, which we just had in September, we get the autumnal equinox. So again, the beginning of a new season. And then again, when it enters Capricorn, we get the beginning of winter, the winter solstice. And again, I'm speaking northern hemisphere wise. Obviously it's the reverse on the southern hemisphere. So yeah, the cardinal signs, cardinal energies, they initiate, they begin things, things kind of start out in a quicker pace. Mutable signs, let me say fixed actually first. So fixed is Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius. And this is an energy that is not moving forward, not moving backward, but it's stasis. It's almost like it's moving downwards. And it's about maintaining. In Taurus season, we don't switch from spring to summer. It's just spring. Like things, there's a stasis there. It's contained in that season. Same with Leo season. We get the brilliance of the sun in Leo season. It's fully summer. And again, apologies to anyone in the southern hemisphere, because it'll be the opposite. It'll be winter. Again, in Scorpio season, where we're in now, we're in fall, right? We're in autumn. And again, in Aquarius season, we're just fully in winter. And then we get to the mutable signs. And mutable energy it's in transition, it's adaptable, it's changing. So that's Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And in those seasons, weather's changing. There's a changeable energy to it. So in Gemini season, we're moving from spring into summer. In Virgo season, we're moving from summer into fall. In what's the next one? Sag, we're moving from fall into winter. And then in Pisces season, we switch from spring from winter into spring. And so there's this energy again of change, of movement. And I bring this up because it's like with the sign that is rising for you, kind of tapping into just like the modality of it can kind of give you a sense of the way that your life flows, right? So if your rising sign is cardinal sign, you're someone that is always like initiating new things. You're always like starting things. Are you finishing them? That's another story. But in general, your life kind of goes through these like series of new beginnings, right? If you have a fixed rising sign, your life moves a little bit slower, a slower pace, right? Because you're not like starting new things all the time. You're not in constant flux, but you are planting your feet in a certain place and sort of like, you know, digging into that place, right? Planting your roots, and wanting to grow and nourish and sustain those roots. So life might move a little bit slower, at a slower pace at least if you have a fixed rising. And then if you have a mutable rising sign like me, things kind of go, you're riding the wave. There's lots of ups and downs. Energy might be a little bit more scattered. And yeah, there's a more adaptable sort of like flowing energy to mutable rising. And then we want to look at the element too. And I'm not going to get too much into it because I don't want to keep you guys here all night. But yeah, if your rising sign is a fire sign, fire and air tend to produce events more quickly. So things might just happen in a quicker pace. And then earth and water things happen a little bit more slowly. Okay, and then we go to planetary rulership. So this is where it gets good. This is where we really start to talk about timing. So check your rising sign. These are the planets that rule each of these signs. So if you're Aries rising, Mars is your chart ruler. If you're Taurus rising, Venus is your chart ruler. If you're Gemini rising, Mercury is your chart ruler. If you're Cancer rising, the moon is your chart ruler. If you're Leo rising, the sun is your chart ruler. If you're Virgo rising, Mercury is your chart ruler. And you can kind of see how we go from the luminaries here, and there's like a little repetition going on right here. But yeah, so if you're Libra rising, Venus. If you're Scorpio rising, Mars is your chart ruler. If you're a Sagittarius rising, Jupiter is your chart ruler. If you're a Capricorn rising, Saturn is your chart ruler. If you're an Aquarius rising, Saturn is your chart ruler. And if you're a Pisces rising, Jupiter is your chart ruler. The outer planets don't rule signs. Okay? Pluto is not your chart ruler if you're a Scorpio. Uranus is not your chart ruler if you're an Aquarius. And Neptune's not your chart ruler if you're a Pisces. Don't get mad at me about this, but I will say that if you're going to be using any sort of like timing techniques, like we're looking at right now, you want to use the traditional rulers. It's not going to make sense if you use the modern rulers. And I will just say that there's a whole system in place that people have been using for thousands and thousands of years that use the traditional rulers as as rulers of the signs. And it works really, really well. So I'll just leave it at that. So your chart ruler sets the pace. I didn't know it was gonna cover up it didn't look like that before. So sorry that covered it up. But yeah, your chart ruler sets the pace of your life. So but I'm going to break this down a little bit more. So if you are a Leo rising, for instance, the sun is your chart ruler. And so we're looking at, how the sun moves through the sky, and anything that happens with the sun basically is going to affect you. I didn't explain this that much before, but the chart ruler, the planet that rules your rising sign, is like basically a representation of you. I like to call it your avatar. It's in some other astrologers will refer to it as like the captain of the ship, the planet that's steering the ship of your life. It's gonna that planet represents you. It's gonna speak to your body, your general like appearance, your energy. I like to call the first house your vibe. So the chart ruler is like, the ruler of that vibe. It kind of speaks to that. And yeah, this is a very important planet in the chart because it's the one that represents you the most. So yeah, if you're a Leo rising and the sun is your chart ruler, we're looking at, what change, like what changes happen to the sun. So every 30 days or so, the sun moves from a different one sign to another sign. So, your life might kind of take the shape of things happening on like a monthly basis, or like changes happening on a monthly basis. And then also like the yearly basis too, because the sun takes about a year to move through the birth chart or move through the zodiac. If you're Cancer rising, the moon is your chart ruler. So we're looking at way shorter period of time. The moon moves through a sign every 2.5 days, and so you might find that you're fluctuating and moving every 2.5, 3 days. And then also we're looking at lunations, which happen every month. So new moons, once a month, full moons once a month for the most part. And we have 2 this month. But yeah, we're looking at things on like a monthly basis. That's like your personal timing. We can look at it on the daily sense and then the monthly. Mercury. So Mercury, kind of goes a little back and forth, but for the most part, takes about 3 weeks in a sign. And so that's like Mercury moving through a part of your chart for about 3 weeks at a time. And then every 3 months, it retrogrades. And so if you are a Gemini or a Virgo rising, Mercury is your chart ruler. Retrogrades are probably going to affect you that much more, which is not a bad thing, because I think that you can take advantage of retrogrades, and I'm all about that. But yeah, so every 3 months or so, we get this retrograde, and that's something that you can use to kind of plan out your life. Venus. So Venus takes about 6 weeks. These are like rough. I'm not, they're pretty accurate though. So about 6 weeks through a sign. And so again, that's like Venus spending 6 weeks in a certain area of your chart. And then every 18 months, Venus retrogrades. So again, you can kind of, use that to sort of like plan out your life and know that like things are going to slow down for you when Venus retrogrades. We had one earlier this year. We're having one again at the end of next year. Yeah. Mars retrogrades, or not retrograde, sorry. Mars takes about 8 weeks, about 2 months to move through a sign. We've had Mars in Aries for 6 months this year because of the retrograde. So yeah, every 2 years or so, about every 2 years, 22 months, Mars retrogrades. So Mars retrogrades the least out of all the planets. It's the rarest retrograde. And that's why Aries and Scorpio risings are really feeling it, because their chart ruler is retrograde, and that doesn't happen often. So yeah, knowing that like, your life can kind of move in these like 8-week increments, and then these retrogrades come along and things kind of elongate into like these 5-6 month period of time where you're doing some extra work. If Jupiter is your chart ruler, if you're a Sag or Pisces rising, Jupiter spends about a year in each sign. That's like a year, give or take. But yeah, so you can kind of expect like these like yearly increments sort of happening. And you can expect kind of like year to year things changing a lot. And then every 12 years, you get a Jupiter return. So yeah, kind of like putting that in perspective too, like 12 years, that's like another like major change that happens. Saturn, if you're a Capricorn or Aquarius rising, Saturn spends about 2.5 to 3 years in a sign, and it takes about 30 years to go full circle around the zodiac. So again, like if you're a Saturnian, you can expect to kind of like have a Saturn, like have your focus be in a particular area of life for about 3 years. Yeah. And so Yeah. Sorry. I'm like, why is it all hidden? So you can apply it to other houses or other areas of life, houses or areas of life. I made up this house wheel here for you guys. And so basically what I wanted to do with this is sort of like show that you can zero in on an area of life and kind of see what planet is in charge of that area, because I like to talk about the planets as like being responsible for certain parts of our lives. And with that we can kind of say, okay, we can tap into timing basically. So, for example, this person, this is a random chart, Gemini rising, right? So Mercury is going to be their chart ruler. But their second house of money, assets, like income, is ruled by the moon. It's Cancer there. So we know that Gemini risings will likely spend by the moon, right? So yeah, that's something to kind of keep in mind. Um, Fourth house, home, family, heritage, land, also ruled by Mercury. So with this person, I would definitely be like, you probably don't want to like buy a house under a Mercury retrograde. You probably don't want to move during a Mercury retrograde because Mercury has responsibility over this person's fourth house. And we want Mercury in the best condition possible, right? If we're going to do fourth house things. Partnership ruled by their Sag here in their seventh house. So we're looking at Jupiter. We can expect, we're look for Jupiter and any sort of like anything happening with Jupiter or anything happening to this person's Jupiter to kind of tap into, okay, timing around partnership. Yeah, that's kind of like a top level. I wanted to see, let me stop sharing real quick. Actually, I will keep sharing because I'm sure you guys want to see that house thing. With this, I wanted to, the Q&A popped up for me all of a sudden. Interesting. So I wanted to see, yeah, you can take a screenshot of this house wheel and I'm gonna like make it available on my website at some point. So let's see. Does anyone have a birthday today? I'm curious. Is there anyone's birthday today who might want to be an example chart? Whose birthday? Anyone? Or tomorrow? Anyone's birthday tomorrow? Halloween babies? Or yesterday? I'm trying to get someone let's see. Anyone's birthday on the 1st? We have Vanessa. Okay, wait, Vanessa. I didn't see it. Mine was Wednesday. It's my cat. Happy birthday to your cat, Scar. Okay. Let's see. Let's use, who wants to do it? Who wants to do it? Let's do oh my god, everyone's I want to do someone whose birthday is like very soon. Okay, let's do you, Adrienne. Your birthday's Monday, the 2nd. That's like the closest I think I've heard so far. Adrienne, if you wouldn't mind dropping your date of birth and your time of birth and your location of birth. I'm going to look at your charts. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Oh, cool, Adrienne. We were born the same year.
Yes, she's born at 4:39 p.m.
Okay. And where was that?
So she just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Work town heights.
Oh, Yorktown. Okay, gotcha. Oh, cool. Okay. New York, New York. I'm going to share, actually, I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing on astro.com so you can see. So this is astro.com, also referred to as Astro Dance. Amazing, amazing website. Truly, like there's so much. Look under the free horoscopes, there's like, oh, so much you can do. I go to free horoscopes and then I go down to under drawings and calculations. I have extended chart selection. That's like my main space, but you can just do, there's so much on here. I highly recommend checking it out. Sorry, it was Yorktown, York something.
Yorktown Heights.
Yorktown Heights. Okay. Yorktown Heights. Yep. Come on, come back. Okay. So we can see that pulls up right there. Okay. And then I have a million extra things in here that we don't need because not important.
It's great that you're showing this because there was a lot of questions about how to.
Yeah, I usually do like a walkthrough, but I was worried that about time, which I'm already like so over time. But yeah, astro.com, free horoscopes, extended chart selection. That's like the place to go. Okay. And then wait, let me go back actually and show you under here. So options for zodiac and houses is where you can see the house system. Sometimes it's like, not displayed like that. So you might have to click on it. And then you can go to whole signs. That's what I use. Not whole sign one Aries, but just whole signs. Okay. Cool. So Adrian, sweets. Oh, my people. Okay. I just love seeing people's charts who are similar to mine. Because I was born just 16 days after you. So happy almost 29th birthday. So yeah, I'm going to do just a little bit of like what I do in terms of tapping into timing. But before I do that, Adrian, are you willing to speak? If I can like give you access to talk, would you be able to? Are you in a quiet enough place where that can happen? Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes, she is. Do you
Okay,
want to
cool.
bring the audio on?
Yeah, okay. Are you on it now? Okay, wait. More.
Activate the
Oh, you
audio.
did it. Okay. Adrian, can you
Hello.
hear me? Hi.
Hi.
I feel like I'm on like a radio show or something.
Me too. So exciting. This is the best birthday present I could think
Oh,
of.
I'm so glad. Okay, so you're turning 29. And just from, well, I guess what I'll ask you first is how has 28 been for you?
Um, I think a lot of learning,
Mhm.
learning about myself, focusing a little bit more inward than I usually do.
Are you partnered?
No.
No? Okay. Okay. I'm trying to figure out like what's the best way to use this time because I can just talk to you about your chart forever. Okay, so I guess what I want to ask you is, are you anticipating any like big changes happening in your life, or do you have any like particular questions that you might want to ask me about? And that can be things like work or relationships or anything really, housing stuff, anything.
I mean, I guess one of the big things right now is I did move home back in May, the end of May, and so I'm looking to kind of shift more permanently back home, so closer to family instead of where I was kind of with friends. So that's kind of a bigger shift, and also thinking about how I can make new connections in a new community. So,
Gotcha.
I mean, forming a lot of partnerships. I know that's my seventh house. So it's kind of on brand, but I think that's really where I feel like drawn to what makes me feel um, energized.
You mean like partnerships, like being in community?
Yeah, being in community with like people close by, finding things that we have in common, and how we can work together, how we can form strong relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously relationships are a big part of your life. With so many planets in your seventh house. And so I'm curious what you do for if you're working right now. Because I look at your chart and I'm like, are you an artist? Like, are you an entertainer? Like, what do you do?
I'm a agile coach for software development teams.
Ooh, okay. I love that. Okay,
My
cool.
sister's here. She's an artist. Very different church.
um
Yeah.
And has there been, I feel like you're like, I'm just looking at the fact that Uranus is like hanging out on your ascendant right now. Um and I'm curious if there's been any like kind of, maybe there hasn't been any major shifts, or maybe that it happened. I wish I had my ephemeris in front of me. I wish, yeah, it's over there. I'm like staring at it, but I can't go grab it. So I don't have exact dates in my mind, but I'm curious if like, um, yeah, you've felt some, or have you experienced any like kind of sudden shifts? And if you haven't, that's okay, because I feel like it's coming. I feel like it's coming in like February, March of this year. But yeah, this past year, especially, like I'm thinking like in the springtime. You said in the spring is when you moved home, was what you said?
At the end of May,
At the
so a
end of
little bit
May.
later.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. Okay. And by moved home, you mean like moved in with your parents?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Um Cool. Okay. Yeah. So I guess like in terms of being in community with folks, being in more community with folks, like-minded community. Um well, I can't help it at like wonder if you are like looking for partnership. Are you?
I mean, yeah, I think so. I feel like I've always kind of been looking for that my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Wherever I've been, I think I want like really deep, intense, and transformative partnerships. So sometimes that's a hard,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, expectation to have.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, yeah, with all that Scorpio stuff in your seventh house. It's like it's like go deep or go home, basically. um,
Yeah.
if you're not gonna get deep with me, then like what's the point? And then I think there's something else with like your Venus placement. I'm really like zeroing in on your Venus right now. Um, and yeah, the work that you're doing right now is that fulfilling for you?
I've kind of been trying to move out of it for a while. I think one thing that might have shifted a little this year was instead of trying to keep applying to new jobs where I wasn't really finding anything that I liked more, I kind of just started doing different things at work that I liked doing more.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so I think I'm trying to find more ways of making what I'm doing fulfilling, even if the role itself isn't what I wanted for myself.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, so for everyone wondering, I'm looking at a couple different things, everything really, but I'm really focusing in on this Venus placement because when you turn 29, you in particular, your Venus becomes activated. So we're looking at your sixth house because Venus rules your sixth house and your first house of self. And yeah, but the sixth house has a lot to do with, let me see, I can't go back, but work, your physical wellness, your lifestyle, and having your Venus. You're born at nighttime, you're born right after sunset. So Venus kind of like activates, like becomes like a little bit more benefic for you. Like it can kind of like, it's responsible for bringing in the good things in your life, the pleasurable things in your life. I can't help but like look at that and think, okay, there's some major changes coming to just like your everyday life, like your lifestyle and your like the way that you just kind of like go about your day to day. It feels like it's going to be even more centered in pleasure and joy and entertainment and like doing things that just feel good. I think that's particularly difficult for you though. Is to like
Yeah.
figure out what it is that makes you feel good, like what turns you on, what excites you, all of that. But and that's kind of been a major focus of 28, I think, too, right? Like you kind of said before, about your work, like figuring out how to have just like enjoy your work more on a day to day. That work definitely continues in 29, but I think it's yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's, you get more opportunities to kind of tap into that. I'm also looking at, up here, this career stuff. So we're talking about work, which is more of like the day to day, like you and your workplace, the stuff that you're doing on a daily basis. But up here, we're looking at the MC and like the 10th house. We're talking about career, and both your midheaven here in Capricorn and your 10th house, Aquarius, are ruled by your Saturn. And you probably know this, but Saturn returns coming back around in December for you. And what's different so we already had 2 exact Saturn returns this year. All of us 1991 babies kind of got a little hint of it already. We got hit already in April and May.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're coming through to the final pass in December. What's different about this pass is that it's joined with Jupiter this time instead of Mars. So when Saturn entered Aquarius earlier this year, it was Saturn and then Mars followed it. And so we had this like really intense Saturn return where it was just like a lot and very scary and just a lot. I'll just say that. This time around, we have Jupiter joined with Saturn. And that's different for sure. Jupiter is a benefic planet, Mars is a malefic planet. Um, Jupiter and Saturn, not necessarily like friends, but they are kind of. They're both daytime. They're both on the daytime team, so they get along better in that regard. And yeah, it's definitely a shift. And so I don't know. I look at your chart and what's kind of coming for you, and I'm like, seems like there's going to be some sort of career or professional shift in some way. Um, Looking at that Saturn return with Jupiter and all of that, it just feels like, yeah, things are kind of crystallizing and like taking form as opposed to just like being in the works. And I don't know if that means anything to you, but that's kind of what I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Thank you.
And then yeah, 30 is definitely the partnership year for you. I feel like you're gonna I feel like 29 is like really important for you to sort of like again, like kind of getting to know what you want and need and what like is exciting for you. 30 is 30 is a partnership year for you.
Okay. The
And it could
partnership.
happen before you turn 30, but I feel like 30 is like when you're in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that helps, like what you said of knowing that there's something on the horizon, knowing that things will change and shift. And it's not
Yeah.
always gonna be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, happy almost birthday. And thank
Yeah.
you so
You
much
too.
for sharing. Thank you. Um, yeah, I'm assuming that this is my like time to shut up.
I'll sit here and listen to you, I'm sure, for hours. But I think that folks are in different time zones and they don't want to miss out. So
Yeah, understandable. I want to just I have
and
like one more. I think I have an end slide. Okay, yeah, this is my end slide.
I do want to
Really
take
nice.
like a couple minutes for some questions because we got a lot of good ones.
Cool.
And so I picked a couple that I thought were resonating with folks.
Mhm.
The first one, I'm sorry, I forgot to like pick or copy and paste your name. So I'm sorry I don't have that information. But we have a lot of interest in Saturn return. So
Cool.
if you could just say a brief.
Yeah,
little
I
bit
do this every day for my clients, so I'm totally down to do that. Um, and yeah, also if you are a millennial, I just did a whole like 2-hour podcast episode with Chris Brennan on the astrology podcast about millennial Saturn placements too. So if you want to hear me talk about this for 2 hours, please check that out. But basically your Saturn return is this period of time when Saturn comes back to the place that it was when you were born, the sign that it was when you were born. And it's basically this coming of age period where you are sort of forced to grow up, for lack of a better phrase. Um, you're forced to mature. And like I said earlier, Saturn has to do with time. And so there is this aspect of like truly like maturing at your first Saturn return. Saturn is the structure of our life. And when Saturn returns, we're given this opportunity to really solidify our structure and sort of like take the reins and become our own parents too. There's this huge reparenting process with Saturn return where we are, yeah, doing for ourselves what um, like giving ourselves what our parents or our caretakers weren't able to. And yeah, like you're growing up basically. So that's a period of time that lasts about 2.5 to 3 years, basically the entire time that Saturn is in the sign that it was in when you were born. Um, depending on where your Saturn is within that sign, when there's like the exact conjunction of the Saturn return, that's going to be when things are probably more intense, or just like things are happening, and then like those are like the kind of the major points, I guess. um yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
No, that's really great. And I encourage everyone to listen. I actually did listen to that episode of the astrology
Oh,
podcast.
thank you.
So as someone
Thanks.
coming out of their Saturn return, it really helped me just integrate a lot of stuff. So
Good.
the other question that I thought was really cool, and I think people wanted to hear about is this question of I really love learning about astrology, but sometimes it gives me like existential like dread almost,
Yeah,
or, like
yeah.
feelings of like how do I grapple with this information? So how do you deal with that, or how does one approach
Yeah, that's a really good question. How do I answer that? Because it's like I've been there. Like I've definitely been there. And for me, I think just knowing that there's everything's very cyclical. But I think a better word probably is spiralic. In that, we can anticipate the good and we can anticipate the bad. And I would recommend the book Cosmos and Psyche, Richard Tarnas, especially if you are hoping to like get a better understanding of like planetary cycles and how they correspond to like earthly events, and like movements in history. It's an incredible book. But yeah, I think that the way I deal with it sometimes is just like you gotta stop looking at the charts. That's okay. Sometimes you gotta, like earlier this year in quarantine, when quarantine first started, we were having a lot of astrologer like get-togethers on Zoom. I was already like doing that a lot in New York. I had monthly dinners with New York area astrologers, but once quarantine started and everyone's on Zoom, and astrologers love to nerd out with each other, so we're talking about everything that was happening, and it was really hard on me. Like it got to the point where I was just like, I can't listen to another astrologer talk about what's going on because it's frying my nervous system thinking about how terrible everything is, right? And this year especially is extra terrible. But it's okay to kind of tune out for a bit, and it's okay to, you know, yeah, just not engage and switch, go to tarot, go to another sort of divination method that isn't so concrete as astrology is. But also knowing that, like, things, just because terrible transits are happening doesn't mean it's going to affect you in a terrible way either. And I think that's really evident in the fact that, like, a lot of people are thriving right now. And it's kind of like weird to say that, but it's true. Like, it's not all bad all the time. And like, yeah, I think that it's really important to remember, like, when we're talking about astrology, when we're talking about planets, we're talking about energy and these like spectrums of energy. So things can fall on any side of the spectrum. Um, and it's not always like the extreme, most of the time it isn't the extreme. So yeah, keeping that in mind too, I guess.
I think that's super helpful.
Good.
Yeah, I think y'all should read Cosmos and Psyche, because I'm reading it right now. It's crazy.
It's so good.
But yeah, I think that's super helpful. I think, in the scope of intuition and these tools, astrology is such a potent tool for, affirming your intuition, as you said. And I do think it's important to, if one gets overwhelming, try something else. It's really good advice. I really appreciate that.
I'm all about whipping out the tarot cards when I just can't deal with astrology anymore. Yeah.
Totally. And then people are asking about book recommendations. I put Cosmos and Psyche and the author in the chat, but if you have any others you want to recommend.
Let me put in the chat a link to my resource list, theastrology.com/resources. Sorry, that's not like a hyperlink or whatever, but I have a whole website page full of my book recommendations. But I will, off the top of my head, if you are interested in learning astrology, especially traditional astrology, which is what I'm always going to suggest, because then you're like, with the traditional astrology, you're learning a system that you can use like for everything. It's just so good. And so check out my course that comes out in the spring. But until then, one of my favorite books for learning is On the Heavenly Spheres, which is a great, like, almost like a textbook sort of thing where it's just a great book to learn. I'm gonna hold up the books that are underneath my mic. Chris Brennan's Hellenistic Astrology is fat, as you can see, but it's great. And then the love of my life, Demetra George, Ancient Astrology. She is incredible. Both of these books are incredible. I use them as reference. No, I have not read all the way through either of them, but they're great books to have as reference. You guys should see this like makeshift little table I made with books in a box. And also my computer is on a Yoni Steam seat right now too. But yeah, so I'll recommend Chris and Demetra. I started out reading Stephen Arroyo books. What is it? Astrology, Psychology, and the Four Elements. All of these are on my resources page too. Also highly recommend Chani Nicholas's You Were Born for This. Chani is of the Demetra George lineage, and I love Chani. Who doesn't, right? She's the shit. And yeah, her book is great for understanding, like, just tapping into your sun, moon, rising, and your ruling planet. It's really, really good for that. What else? I have a book, but it's just about Pisces. So if you're a Pisces or have Pisces planets, you can check out my book. And yeah, Many Moons. I don't know. I haven't read that one. Chris. So Chris's book is called Hellenistic Astrology, the Study of Fate and Fortune. And Demetra's book is called Ancient Astrology. Yeah, volume 1. Demetra she's just the best. And I would also recommend, if you're like me and you're not a good reader, like it's really hard for me to read. A lot of astrologers have webinar recordings and lecture recordings. And so I would highly recommend, that's how I learn, is like I listen and I take notes. And so Demetra George has like a shit ton on her website. I would check out astrologyuniversity.com. They have a ton of like webinars that you can purchase for like between $25 and $35. Yeah, if you become a member of ESAR, the International Society of Astrological Research, they have a whole library of recordings from like decades that you can listen to. AYA, the Association of Young Astrologers, all this is on my resource list too, but AYA, the Association of Young Astrologers, has recordings of like, they call them dinner and drinks, which are like when they invite an astrologer on to kind of just like casually talk about something. And so I learn a lot from recordings and like live webinars and stuff like this. Basically, that's the way that I learn the best. So yeah.
That's so awesome. That your resource list is going to be devoured, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I apologize it's not as pretty as I want it to be. Eventually I'm going to get around to redesigning it, but
Oh my
yeah.
goodness, there's one question that someone really wanted to know how you made your presentation, because it's so beautiful.
Oh, okay. First time ever using Canva.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just like stressing about it, and I was like, you know what? All the Gen Zers are talking about this Canva. I'm going to check it out. So yeah, Canva.
It's the best. Yeah.
It's great.
Well, if you want to share where folks can find you, I put your booking link in the chat, but
Yeah, I'm booked out throughout the rest. Don't try to book with me this year, but I will open back up for January, February. But yeah, hit me up.
follow Kirah and listen.
And you have the podcast too.
Yeah, check out my podcast. It's called The Astrology Show. You can listen to it anywhere. It's on YouTube too. And if you're interested in like, this is my favorite thing about my show is that the first like I guess 8 episodes. The first episode it's a standalone amazing conversation I had with 3 incredible astrologers, and then after that I did an episode for each of the planets. So there's an episode like 2 hours talking about the sun, 2 hours talking about the moon, with other astrologers. It's like conversations. And so I have that for all of the planets. And I think it's a really good learning tool. So yeah, if you're interested, definitely check out my show. I am having a blast with it.
Amazing. I can't wait till like this next generation that's on the rise is just like fluent in astrology.
Yes, it's a dream.
It's gonna be amazing.
That is insane how this generation just woke up to astrology, and so it's just so exciting to see it.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's a dream come true for me.
Well, thank you so much, Kirah. This was amazing. And so
thank you.
I'm really happy we could record this, and we'll be sharing it with everyone. So yes, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you all for tuning in and sticking on. I know I've been talking for forever. Thank you so, so, so much.
All right, everyone. Have a good night, and we'll see a lot of you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good night. Sweet dreams.
Bye.